as the Senate, we prioritize every need, every crop. Every senator needs to come to the House and give us a proposal of ways in which they can make their counties economically viable. Mr. Speaker, we must begin to change our thinking. And that is a problem that I have. And I wish Senator Sifuna was here as I make my presentation, because he comes from the school of thought that forever, that it is possible, Mr. Speaker, to fund counties to trillions of shillings and ensure that for every need that farmers have, we shall always send money to them, Mr. Speaker. Part of the organization that I see being brought, Mr. Speaker, is that you know that it is a universal principle that for every service that you enjoy from a government, there must be pay for it, Mr. Speaker. The good organization, the licensing that Senator Wambua is talking about, is not money that shall be reverted back to the national government. That's a form of taxation to the people. But the beauty about it and the beauty of what is in this bill, Mr. Speaker, is that I want to propose, and the unfortunate thing is that perhaps Senator Wambua, during a committee of the whole, this is something that you may want to propose, though we can have actually an overarching principle for all crops about this, Mr. Speaker, is that when counties collect levies, then we must ring-fence that levy, even the license fee, to go back to the development of the particular crop. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, it will happen like happened to us in tea. Why did we abolish cess and levies from the tea crop, Mr. Speaker? It's because counties were collecting cess from tea factories and the farmers that were doing this crop, but not making the roads that was meant to do. Yet previously, before we had county governments, Mr. Speaker, that is what used to happen. Therefore, we must find a way of ring-fencing these levies that are collected from these farmers, so that we see this is the way that you shall develop and ensure, Senator Wambua, that your farmers in Kitui and all the farmers in Kenya who shall be participating in the development of this crop have good extension services, have got better pest control, because the county government will be able to use that levy to send 1 or 2 officers here to Calro to receive training and be guided properly, go back to Kitui, impart the farmers with knowledge, ensure that if this year you're producing 10 kgs per acre, that there are practices that can be used even to make you produce 15 or 20. That is the beauty of government. That's how county governments need to operate. We must stop this obsession, Mr. Speaker, of imagining that we shall just always send monies to counties and that it is possible to find at some point where we'll have said, oh, finally we have sent resources enough with the services. We must be creative in our thinking and challenge our counties to know. I believe you, Mr. Speaker. I persuade my colleague senators to believe and understand that it is possible, and farmers, I have seen this with my tea farmers. I see this even with sugarcane farmers in my county who are now pleading and saying, please pass the sugar bill that is before the Senate and the National Assembly. We don't mind paying the sugar levy, that sugar development levy, so long as it's ring-fenced and we know that it shall come to develop for us roads that shall take the cane back to the factories and develop even seed cane for us. So people don't have a problem paying taxes, Mr. Speaker. They just have a problem with how that tax is spent, Mr. Speaker. And even this conversation about the finance bill, Mr. Speaker, it's all about people asking themselves that once we give this money to the government, what is our assurance? I want to give an assurance, Mr. Speaker, that as a leader in this House, as a leader in one of the 3 arms of government in charge of the legislature, now that the finance bill has been passed, the duty is upon us to ensure that for every tax that Kenyans are paid to this administration, that it is put to prudent use, Mr. Speaker, so that eventually we shall be able to, at least to a good extent, win over those Kenyans who have a problem paying taxes simply on account that they do not see it going to do that which it was meant for, Mr. Speaker. This is a proposal that we find itself in this particular bill, and for which I agree with Senator Wambua. If you read the Intergovernmental Relations Act, Senator Wambua, many times, and we have seen this proposal, our counties rely on the national government, either to in transfer of functions, Mr. Speaker, that when a county, for example, is not able to collect levies or one reason or the other particular service they are not able to provide, they surrender it to the national government. Senator Wambua, if and when this bill is eventually passed and enacted into law, it is possible to strictly follow every letter and spirit of this document and have your own county of Kitui develop and build this practice of mang cultivation to such excellent levels that other counties, including the national government, can actually transfer the function of developing policy and the practices of mang farming to Kitui government so that whatever they use, whatever practices they have learned, applies across the country. That is what devolution is about. It should not only be imagined that it is always the counties that surrender to the national government functions. It is possible for a county government to excel in a particular practice and trade to a point that the national government actually selects and says, County Wajir or County Marsabit have excelled so much in the development of livestock and, building the paddocks and developing the framework in that trade to a point that we want to cede even policy development to them. And whatever they do there in Wajir, in Marsabit, in Kitui, applies across the county. That is what we need to be aspiring to as representatives of county in this house. That is the spirit of devolution, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, let us not reduce this conversation about counties. I hear my friends from the minority side each and every time want to remind us, oh, we wanted 417. It's not just about money. It's more than money, Mr. Speaker. You can send billions. And we know that we have done this. We have capacity, Mr. Speaker, to stand up for higher than even what they are talking about. But, Mr. Speaker, we are alive to the challenges and the situation that we find ourselves in as a country. The thing that I want to challenge my colleagues, all of us in the Senate, is think of ways in which we can spur economic activity in our counties over and above the funds that we devote to our counties. It's not just about sending resources. Resources are important, Mr. Speaker, but more important are ideas and policies that will make counties sustainable, Mr. Speaker, over and above, beyond even that which is devolved as a fund, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, I congratulate Senator Wambua for this immense and important proposal that he has sent to us. Of course, I have seen the fines that is being proposed on large-scale farmers, especially those that fail to register and all those challenges that may arise out of it. I hope, Mr. Speaker, that counties will understand and appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that any levy that has been developed or gains to the county from the practice of this particular crop, Mr. Speaker, should be cultivated back to it, Mr. Speaker, at least to a greater extent. It's not possible maybe to do it 100% because there are other services, but at least to a greater extent, Mr. Speaker, see ways in which, as a county, you can develop train other farmers, develop a subsidy program like the national government is doing, Mr. Speaker, with the fertilizer subsidy. Of course, I know people are talking about the cost of food, but you have to appreciate, Mr. Speaker, and one of the things I'm happy about is our fertilizer subsidy program, Mr. Speaker. Those of us that come from the food growing regions, Mr. Speaker, appreciate, at least know that despite the fact that there is a high cost of food right now, in the next 2 or 3 months, we shall have a bumper harvest, Mr. Speaker. I work in many farms over weekends, Mr. Speaker, and I see the kind of crop that we're expecting this time, and I appreciate that this first policy that this administration took of running through a subsidy program to our farmers, Mr. Speaker, is beginning to yield fruits. Second thing, which I have seen Senator Wambua propose, is the fact that it is important to register farmers. The new gold, Mr. Speaker, they say, the new oil, Mr. Speaker, they say, is data. Data is king. Whoever is making decisions, Mr. Speaker, that is well informed by modern and well-kept and updated data, Mr. Speaker, makes the most accurate decision. That's why I appreciate the proposal to register these farmers, Mr. Speaker. You know for a fact, Mr. Speaker, that, many times, Mr. Speaker, and we've had this conversation about the media and this obsession that they have about negative news in our country. A genius thing happened, Mr. Speaker. I don't know if you're aware, Mr. Speaker, that upon the coming into office of this administration, within 2 months, and with the least of budget possible, we were able to register farmers across the country, millions of them who are now benefiting out of the fertilizer subsidy program. In fact, previous reports that were found at the Ministry of Agriculture were quoting 5 to 10 billion shillings as what it will cost to register farmers in the country. But out of a meeting chaired by the President and his deputy, Mr. Speaker, chiefs, and using the provincial administration structure, were able to go to each village and register people, village by village, because they know your land size. You cannot go to your village, Mr. Speaker, and claim to have 10 acres while your chief knows very well that you live on 5 points. That was the quickest way to get the proper and most accurate data today, and it is based on that information that you book your allocation. Those with 2 acres, because the science is there, Mr. Speaker, you need X number of bags per acre. So depending on your, on your size, Mr. Speaker, that's the amount of fertilizer that you apply for. This is a kind of modern agriculture practice that is being advocated for in this bill, and I support the fact that there will be need for registration of farmers, Mr. Speaker. This is the kind of legislation that you are looking for as a House, Mr. Speaker, and I hope we can have many such legislations, Mr. Speaker, so that we help our counties to appreciate the important role that they play. The fact that agriculture is devolved and they know that there is need to manage our agriculture better, Mr. Speaker, so that there is better productivity. Because the more you produce as a county, Mr. Speaker, the more you are able to earn, the more levies you are able to collect, the more services you are able to provide. You improve on your gross domestic product as a county, Mr. Speaker, as we have seen in the last few days. And I hope this can be the same. I challenge colleague senators. There's something that can be done. Even those that come from the most arid of areas, Mr. Speaker, up north and in very difficult parts of the county, there is at least something that you can do and excel it to greater levels, Mr. Speaker, and earn a living for your people. And this is what the Senate is about. This is what devolution is about. And I hope that we can have as many legislation such as this, Mr. Speaker. With those many remarks, I beg to support and congratulate my colleague, Leader Senator Wambua, for a brilliant and well-thought-out bill. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Majority Leader. Senator Wamatinga Wahome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I also like to support this wonderful bill from the Senator for Kitui. Mr. Speaker, sir, I do pride to be sitting in the Committee of Agriculture, and I've seen the vigor and the passion that the Senator for Kitui has been pushing this bill, among other bills that will bring changes in the agricultural sector. As has been said by many, Mr. Speaker, sir, MAGBIN can be one of the products that can ensure that Kenya moves closer towards attainment of food security. We are all aware that it's not a highly perishable product, and that being the case, Mr. Speaker, sir, putting legal frameworks in place, enhancing and encouraging farmers and protecting them so that they are not exploited can be a move that can ensure that Kenya will never again rely on relief food. Mr. Speaker, sir, we know that MAGBIN is also very rich in nutritional value, and we know that with discussion of starting school feeding programs, like has been done by the County of Nairobi, and which is a very fast picking momentum in other counties, MAGBIN is one of the things that we can resort to instead of relying on the traditional beans that have been up to now a challenge even to get. In terms of farming, we know that this is a crop that does well in areas that do not have a lot of rainfall. What we need to do, and as I thank Senator Wambua for this, is to manage it so that we have post-harvest wastages will be managed, and at the same time, we'll encourage the county governments to ensure, as they are arranging to start school feeding programs, one of the main components, other than ugari and maize, should be the MAGBINs. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to thank the Senator for the passion that he's expressed so far, and indeed for coming up with this wonderful bill, and for his very, very supportive role even when we are embarking on the coffee and tea bill. And now, after we are done with the MAGBIN, I know that we are going to start on macadamia and nuts bill. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to say the commitment of the Agricultural Committee, where I and Senator Wafula here sits, and Senator Wambua, under the able leadership of our chair, Senator Murango from Kirinyaga, we want to be written in the books of history at that committee that sat down, regardless of the party lines, and decided we must make a difference in this country. We must end the overexploitation of our farmers by cartels, by laws that only favors a few people. We have, Mr. Speaker, sir, decided We are going to take this path, as difficult as it may be, but we must, by end of this term, write down in the book of history that, yes, the Agricultural Committee came with record bills to change the destiny of farmers in this country, because we are aware, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have what it takes, we have the passion, we have the drive, and most importantly, our committee is composed of highly competent and passionate senators who want to make a change in the history of this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I sit down, it is important to point out the Kenya Kwanza government is committed to ensuring that it puts structures in places, including industries and processing, aggregated processing plants, so that we can be able to add value. We know mung bean, after it has been harvested, the only thing you need to do is sort it out, package it, and it's ready for export, it's ready for the shelf life, and we know it has a long shelf life. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would want to take this opportunity even to urge my colleagues, even from the minority side, we must support what can change the destiny of our people. And that is, one of them is this finance bill, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because once we are able to raise the taxes, once we are able to put money in the government coffers, we'll be able also to inject much more resources so that we can develop infrastructure, and most importantly, the aggregated county development and processing centers, which I think will be a game changer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I support.
Thank you very much, Senator Wamatinga. Senator Karungo Thangwa Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this great opportunity to rise and support this bill by my good friend, Senator for Kitui, Senator Wambua. Mr. Speaker, when I read this bill, first of all, it hit me and I asked myself, why just dengue? Why can't we just throw in beans, njahe, peas, and everything in it? And then I realized, Mr. Speaker, when you specialize on something, sometimes it's not good to mix you with other people who are doing different things. And so, Mr. Speaker, I saw it is fit for us to discuss mung beans alone, because we have coffee, which has its own law, we have tea, which has its own law, we were discussing cotton the other day, so I think this is the way to go. Mr. Speaker, when I did my research on the issue of dengue, I was asking myself, because I didn't know, where it comes from. And I realized that 95% of dengue comes from Kitui, Makueni, Tharaka Nithi, Machakos, Meru, and Embu. So that is a place where this dengue comes from, Mr. Speaker. And so we need this law. And for us to have this law, the only problem I have with this law, Mr. Speaker, which the Senator for Kitui should note, is the creation of these committees, Mr. Speaker. I don't know why, I don't know whether it's a template. So many laws create committees. And Mr. Speaker, the reason why I'm raising this issue is because the creation of committees without knowing is a creation of cartels, Mr. Speaker. The moment you create a committee to focus on a free market that was free before, then you have given power to a few people to manage a whole group, Mr. Speaker. But what can be done? The county governments, they do have channels, they do have departments, they do have employees, they do have extension officers. I think we should have the county government to come up with a way to manage the whole process, rather than just formation of a committee of a few individuals. And the committee says we need to include somebody who is in this business. The moment you get that person who is doing that business and you uplift them above everybody else, now that is where the cartels begins, Mr. Speaker. Ask those people who are in the coffee industry. When you form a body that is supposed to do a certain task that was not done before, or that anybody is supposed to do, you give power to some people who, if they do not have the business or the production, or they do not have the farming of dengue at heart, they will use that opportunity to form that cartelism or cartel that deters others from growing this dengue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the bill itself, it is tasking the Council of Governors to make sure the counties improve the production. That is a good thing, Mr. Speaker, because agriculture is devolved. And that is good because we, being an agricultural nation, I think the counties should be tasked, forced, pushed to make sure that they improve on agriculture, Mr. Speaker. But when they do that, they need to do research. Research in the sense where they're going to have this market. Research in the sense, how do we benefit, other than nutritional value of dengue, what are the other benefits? Maybe it is medicinal, Mr. Speaker, and you never know. Because I was just reading around and I saw that it helps in weight loss. I don't know. I mean, we need them to do research. It helps in lowering your cholesterol. I don't know, Mr. Speaker. I just read an article. But if they do this research and they certify, Mr. Speaker, I believe everybody will be going to these shops and say, I want to do dengue because it is preventing heart diseases. It is preventing, it is fighting cancer, Mr. Speaker. That is an article that was online that gave me this information. But is it true, Mr. Speaker? We are asking these county governments and the governors and this government of ours to do research and certify or ascertain these claims so that people will have an idea of what are the benefits of dengue. Of course, it's food, but we need to know. I have a friend of mine, Mr. Speaker, who goes to uji joints. He knows all the uji joints in Kiambu. And the only reason he goes there is because he was told, if you take this unji, it will give you some powers. I don't want to go to that direction, Mr. Speaker, but I do understand, you understand what I mean. So maybe this dengue has the same. And if you go to Yaya Center, without promoting the shop, Mr. Speaker, there's a shop there, just close to the building, not exactly the building. They're selling a Chinese product, and they do have dengue juice, Mr. Speaker. And I hope the senator for Kitui is listening to this. Maybe tomorrow I can go to that shop and bring you dengue juice. I had to buy it and drink it, and it was a good one. So this is what the county government should do to give value addition to these products, Mr. Speaker. And you remember in our budget, the budget that was passed, that was read the other day, every county will benefit with an aggregation center, Mr. Speaker. These aggregation centers is where the farmers will be taking their produce for it to have value addition, for it to be packed. And you know, Mr. Speaker, as much as Senator Sifuna was talking about, we should not talk about the finance bill. I mean, these aggregation centers wouldn't be available without the finances. And these finances won't be available without the finance bill. So I think Senator for Nandi was right to link in the finance bill on this issue of Mangbin. Because even the farmers themselves from Kitui, Makueni, Tharaka-Nithi, and Machakos, they need markets to sell this produce. In our budget, or the budget that was read by the CS Treasury, 181 markets are going to be built, Mr. Speaker. We cannot have 181 markets without the finances. We cannot have the finances without the finance bill, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we need the counties to train these farmers. And by training them, not only in the ways of farming, in the ways of producing it, even in the conservation of it, how to keep it from the pests, you know, weevils and everything else, Mr. Speaker. So when it comes to promotion of mung bean, Mr. Speaker, I do support this bill. It is a very good bill. And I believe all we need to do is copy-paste and introduce other cereals when it comes to coming up with the new laws. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, the counties are supposed to register the growers, Mr. Speaker. I think this is a good step towards understanding who farms this kind of product, what scale. Is it just a small farm? Is it a big farm? And you know, Mr. Speaker, when the county has data, it will be able to know who they distribute the fertilizer to. We have the subsidized fertilizer. Of course, again, which is in the budget that require finances, the finances that were supposed to be gotten from the finance bill. And so that's why we are telling the Senator for Kitui, this finance bill is going to assist even the farmers whom we are talking about here, the farmers, the dengue farmers. So what I was trying to say, Mr. Speaker, with data, the county government will be able to know whom to give this fertilizer. Right now, if you ask them, they don't know. They don't even know whether those farmers they give have crops, how big is the farm. Everybody is given a sack of it, which is about 50 kgs or 70 kgs, I don't know. But when you go home, maybe they have 50 by 100, another one has 10 acres. So with the data, they'll be able to know who requires what, Mr. Speaker. And the issue of licensing, and that was my issue when I said about the committee. When you have a committee that gives these licenses, when you have a committee that has to scrutinize whose dengue has to go to which market, now they'll start talking about grading. There'll be grade A, grade B, grade C. Just the way they do with coffee. They say there's grade this, grade that, but when you go to the supermarket, have you ever asked grade A coffee? You just buy coffee and you go home. So I think the best thing is to make sure that we do not form a committee that comes up with this kind of regulations that will hinder the purpose of this bill. So licensing, Mr. Speaker, is very important for traders and, of course, processors. This, again, is to control quality and to know who is doing what so that our farmers do not get oppressed. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I think I've given out all my contribution. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Thank you, Senator Karungo. Senator Commissioner John Kinyua Nderitu.
Asanti Bwana Spika kunipa fursa hii. Kuanzia mwanzo nataka kumpongeza Senator Enoch Wambua kwa kuleta mswada huu, Bwana Spika, mswada wa ndengu, Bwana Spika. Nikimpa heko na kongole, wakulima wa ndengu walikuwa hawajulikani vizuri, kwa sababu nimesikiza hata maseneta wote waliokuwa wakiongea walisema hata hawakujua ndengu kwa Kiingereza ni nini. Kwa hivyo Mheshimiwa Enoch, nataka kupongeza kwa sababu wakulima walionekana ni wakulima wa kahawa, wakulima majani chai, wakulima wa mahindi, wakulima wa pareto na wakulima wa pamba. Nataka kukushukuru kwa kuwapa hadhi wakulima wa ndengu. Na Bwana Spika, nikiangalia mswada huu wote niuangalie kwa kindani, kile ambacho kimefanywa na Senator wa Kitui amefanya kitu kizuri kusema ya kwamba sasa ukulima wa ndengu ameufanya ukawa kilimo biashara, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu mambo yote ambayo yametajwa hapa, Bwana Spika, yanazingatia kuleta gharama nafuu ya ukulima wa ndengu, Bwana Spika. Na Bwana Spika, ni vizuri ijulikane wazi kwamba ukiangalia, Bwana Spika, mambo yote ambayo yametajwa hapa, naona Bwana Spika anasema ya kwamba kutaangaliwa ni mbegu gani ambazo zitakazotumiwa, ni mbegu gani, mbegu ambazo ni za hali ya juu, ambazo utafiti tayari umefanywa, Bwana Spika. Anataja kusema ya kwamba, Bwana Spika, ni paka mbegu zenyewe ziwe zimeidhinishwa. Anaendelea kusema ya kwamba mbolea, Bwana Spika, iangaliwe vizuri. Ukiangalia tena anasema ya kwamba hata mchanga kwa wale wakulima unaangaliwa ndio kunajulikana mchanga gani unafaa ambao utaweza kutumika kwa ukuzaji wa ndengu, Bwana Spika. Hakomei hapo, Bwana Spika, anaendelea kwa kusema ya kwamba kuangaliwe na kuwekwe mikakati ya kutosha ndio kuweze kuangaziwa kama ni mambo ya kwekwe ipiganwe na kwekwe, na anaonyeshana vizuri, Bwana Spika, vile ambavyo hayo mambo yanapaswa kufanya. Bwana Spika, hakomei hapo, anasema ya kwamba soko ya hawa wakulima wa ndengu inapaswa iangaliwe na ilindwe, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu wakati mwingi ukiangalia katika ukulima, mkulima kazi yake, Bwana Spika, ni kulima. Baada ya kulima, basi wale walagai ambao huwa katikati ya mkulima na yule ambaye atakayetumia chakula hiki anaingilia kati. Unapata ya kwamba, Bwana Spika, mkulima anagandamizwa kwa sababu hata bei anayeuza bidhaa yake, Bwana Spika, ni bei ambayo ni bei hafifu, Bwana Spika. Unampata sasa huyu mkulima hawezi hata kujikimu kimaisha, Bwana Spika. Ndiposa nikasema ya kwamba mswada huu nikiuangalia kindani ni kilimo biashara, na nataka kumshukuru seneta kwa sababu amezingatia haya mambo. Anaendelea kwa kusema ya kwamba kuna paswa kufanywe utafiti wa kutosha na kujulikane kabisa ni wakulima wangapi ni wanaokuza hii mimea, na kujulikana ni wakulima wangapi, Bwana Spika, itakuwa ni rahisi sana kujua. Basi wakati tunatafuta soko zetu, tunatafuta soko za kiasi gani ya ndengu yetu. Bwana Spika, nilimsikiza Profesa Kamara akimuuliza maswali mwanafunzi wake Seneta Enoch Wambua, akimuuliza itawezekanaje sasa, kwa sababu mipaka imefunguliwa, ndengu zinaweza zikatoka Tanzania, zikatoka Uganda, zikauzwa hapa kwetu Kenya. Lakini Bwana Spika, nikiangalia mswada huu vile ambavyo umetengenezwa, na naona ya kwamba yeye vile ambavyo anajaribu kufanya, Bwana Spika, ni kuonyesha ya kwamba ukulima wetu utakuwa umefanywa na bei nafuu. Kwa hivyo hata ndengu zozote zikiletwa kutoka nchi jirani, Bwana Spika, hasitaweza kushindana kwa bei, Bwana Spika, na ndengu zetu. Kwa hivyo wataona ni kazi bure, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo hata hana shida yoyote na ndengu ambazo zinatoka nchi nje. Vile anavyofanya ni ya kuonyesha ya kwamba kwa sababu tutakuwa tukijua kiasi cha ndengu ambacho tuko nacho, Bwana Spika, wale wanahusishwa, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu anaendelea kusema kwamba, Bwana Spika, kujulikane wale wanunuzi watakao kununua kwa idadi kubwa ni akina nani, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo Bwana Spika, sina shaka pangu rohoni, mswada huu nikiuangalia, Bwana Spika, umezingatia mambo mengi, na namshukuru zaidi kwa sababu haikufikiriwa. Hata nimsikia Karungu wa Dhang'wa akijaribu kusema pengine kungeongezwa. Alijaribu kujiuliza kwa nini hakukuwekwa maharagwe ya kawaida. Lakini maharagwe yanajulikana, Bwana Spika, na nataka kukubaliana na yeye kwa sababu alisema hakutaka kuleta kwa sababu angetaka kuleta mimea ile mingine kwa sababu italeta vurugu, na alitaka huu mmea wa ndengu ubaki peke yake, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo, Bwana Spika, mimi nasimama kuunga mkono, na Bwana Spika, hili ni jambo nzuri hasa kwetu Laikipia, kwa sababu tukizingatia haya mambo amesema, na nimeona ametaja ya kwamba kila kaunti wanaweza kuangalia haya mambo kwa kindani. Hata sisi Laikipia tukizingatia kwamba ukienda Kitui, tunaweza toka sisi Laikipia tuende tuangalie vile wanavyofanya hayo mambo Kitui. Mchanga ni yupi, Bwana Spika, uko pale Kitui, kwa sababu hata sisi Laikipia tuna wanasayansi ambao katika kaunti yetu waangalie, na sisi tuweze tukakuza ndengu Laikipia. Na Bwana Spika, nambari ya wale watakokuwa kukuza ndengu Laikipia, kwa sababu ametaja ya kwamba nambari ijulikane, na hakusema tu katika kaunti, amesema Kenya nzima kwa jumla, kwa sababu yeye ni seneta wa nchi ya Kenya, Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo hili itakuwa ni jambo nzuri, Bwana Spika, itakuwa mwanzo hata sisi kwetu tuweze kusoma kutoka kaunti ya Kitui. Bwana Spika, hii sheria tukiipitisha, Bwana Spika, na iweze kufanya kazi, Bwana Spika, itawasaidia wakulima wa ndengu, Bwana Spika, na tunaweza tukaiga hii sheria, Bwana Spika. Sisi tuna wakulima ama wafugaji wa ng'ombe, Bwana Spika, kwa sababu tukizingatia hizi sheria, Bwana Spika, amesema kuhusu utafiti Bwana Spika. Hata sisi tufanye utafiti ndio tuweze kupata ni mbegu gani nzuri ya ndume ambayo Bwana Spika tunaweza tukawa nayo. Bwana Spika, tufanye utafiti ni chumvi gani sana inaweza kutumika pale kwetu Laikipia ndio tuweze kuongeza mavuno yetu maradufu. Bwana Spika, tukizingatia vile alivyosema, namkumbuka naibu wa rais na Mheshimiwa Karungo Thang'wa ataniunga mkono, kwa sababu hili jambo la majani chai, hili jambo la kahawa limekuwa na hawa na nataka kuwaita wakora Bwana Spika, ambao kazi yao ni kuvuna ambapo hawajapanda Bwana Spika. Na hili ndio swala nyeti ambalo najua Senator Enoch Wambua analizingatia, ndio tuweze kuondoa hawa wanaitwa kwa lugha ya Kiingereza Bwana Spika mabrokers. Na wengine wanaongeza lugha nyingine Bwana Spika, ukinikubalia wanaitwa cartel Bwana Spika. Hawana shamba lolote, hawajalima mahali popote, hawana chochote wanachofanya, kazi yao ni kukaa kungoja Bwana Spika. Na mimi naweza nikawalinganisha na fisi Bwana Spika. Kazi yake ni kumfuata mtu, anaangalia vile mkono unavyoenda, akingoje uanguke Bwana Spika. Hawalimi, hawafanyi chochote, lakini wao ni kuja na kuwalagai wakulima, kwa sababu wakulima hawana mahali pa kuuza mazao yao. Lakini Enoch, na kushukuru kwa sababu umeangazia mambo ya masoko yetu ya watu wa ndengu. Na hili Bwana Spika, hii sheria Bwana Spika, hata sina shaka pangu rohoni kwa nini Senator Enoch Wambua alichaguliwa mara ya pili. Na mswada huu ukipita Bwana Spika, tena naona, sitaki kusema lakini naona Bwana Spika, kwa sababu macho ni yangu, naona, nikiangalia naona mbali, akienda vivyo hivyo Bwana Spika, Mungu si adhumani, Enoch atakuwa governor wa pale Kitui. Na tunashukuru, ni maombi ya Mungu. Unajua wewe ni Mkristo na unakubaliana na mimi Bwana Spika. Kwa hivyo mimi ningependa kusema ya kwamba naunga mkono mswada huu, na nimwambie Mheshimiwa Enoch Wambua, baada ya sisi kuupitisha, ufuatilie vizuri wale wakulima wa ndengu pale Kitui, ndiposa wawe funzo kwetu sisi ambazo tumetoka sehemu zile zingine ambazo hatukuzi ndengu, na pengine tunaweza tukatumia mswada huu Bwana Spika kujua ni vipi hata sisi tunaweza tukakuza ndengu, tukakuza hata mimea ile ingine, ama mimea ile ingine ambayo inakuwa kaunti zetu, hasa kwetu Laikipia. Tujue tunaweza kutumia sheria hizi Bwana Spika, tuweze kuwasajili wakulima wetu, kuwapatia mbolea Bwana Spika, na kuweza kuwatafutia soko ya mimea yetu, na waweze kupata faida kwa mimea ambayo wamepanda. Nashukuru Bwana Spika na naunga mkono.
Asante sana Senator Kinyua. Senator Esther Okenyuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. This is a very interesting time to actually be alive and listen to such a bill be discussed on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, when lawmakers come together, they solve challenges facing a country. And this evening, we are yet seeing Senator Wambua, the Kitui Senator, come up with a bill which is going to address so many other challenges and be part of the issues Kenya is dealing with as a country. Mr. Speaker, I want to start by noting that the mag bean is an actually very important type of legume, which is very popular even among the members of the Adventist family. That's the Seventh-day Adventist faithfuls. Because we are, as one of them, we are actually encouraged to partake in this high protein content legume, which as a plant has several other benefits. When I actually check, it contains benefits which are supporting pregnant mothers, children, and mothers who are also lactating. When I look at this, it's a very good opportunity for women across the country. Once county governments embrace this crop as a cash crop, and even for the smallholder farmers, it's going to open up so many other avenues for women and young people and children to benefit. Mr. Speaker, I saw on the section where the senator talks about a committee being established, I hope in that committee there will be representation of women and young people, and in the registration process of registering these farmers, that process needs someone who's very keen and with attention to details. And I think I have a very radical proposition on that one. I think young people should be given a priority, and deliberately that should be included in this bill so that when it actually ascends to being law, that's not overlooked, because sometimes when implementing, the issue of including young people or women is neither here or there, and all the time an excuse is given that the law was silent on this matter. Mr. Speaker, I also want to note that in as much as this is popular in counties like Embu, Meru, in fact, I see they have special names for those projects just to motivate people to practice farming of mung beans. I think other counties, like the county of my origin where I come from, this is a good thing that will also open their eyes to embrace this kind of legume, so that we are not just used to the bananas, avocados, and other long-term growing plants. When you actually look at the mung bean, it takes a very short time to grow, very little productivity costs related to it. And we as a country are coming from a situation where most of our people or most of our citizens are low-class people. So I think this will be an affordable crop for them to plant and participate in improving their lives. Mr. Speaker, I also want to bring to the attention of members that this, the mung bean, I know when county governments embrace it fully, we are going to see actually a rush into embracing this, and we might be having very many of those beans that have been harvested. Hope we will have a way of looking at the post-harvest so that we do not have the beans be destroyed by weevils or other adverse conditions then that the different regions face. Mr. Speaker, as I conclude, this government has given priority to subsidize fertilizer, which for the first time has gone to the very lowest level of the different areas where we come from. And I'm saying that because I also got reports from my own village of farmers who got access to this fertilizer. So you can imagine with such kind of incentives to boost agriculture, we have no reason for people not participating in agriculture because it's the backbone of our economy. And this will make it lucrative even for the young people. I see you have mentioned the embracing of current modern technology. That's where most of our young people lie, and they'll be coming up with their innovations. There need to be modalities of siphoning such kind of ideas to the different county governments so that we are having county governments that are taking up this project fully. Mr. Speaker, this will also actually registering the farmers who will be undertaking the farming of mung bean will make it easier to mobilize these farmers into cooperatives, because when they do it in their smallholder capacity, sometimes they're not able to apply for loans and other incentives that come with farming. So with such a bill, we are going to have a provision that will allow the small farmers have circles that will give them access to loans and other facilities that are already in existence. And for the young people, I'll be looking forward for them uptaking more funds from the youth fund, because the other week I visited the youth fund, I realized some regions, young people completely do not take up this money, and it's money that is at an affordable rate. Once you have an organized group, you can actually repay. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to actually support Senator Wambua by coming with such a bill at this time. And decisions made by this House are life and death decisions. So for this one, this is a life decision, and I commend Senator Wambua for a well thought out proposal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Veronica Ndwati.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I first want to thank you for the opportunity to give my contribution in relation to the bill that has been introduced by Senator Enoch Wambua, and to congratulate him for thinking about making legislation that touch on a crop like the mung bean, Mr. Speaker. If you look at the categorization of this crop, Mr. Speaker, it's one of those in the category that doesn't get the attention that the tea and the coffee, the likes of tea, coffee, cotton, pyrethrum have the status they have attained, Mr. Speaker, sir, because for a long time, these are treated as crops that are within agricultural crops that are for feeding the nation, Mr. Speaker, sir, and they seem to be dedicated not to the first level but to a different level, Mr. Speaker, sir. They do not seem to be the first degree of crops that are given the attention and the kind of resource that would require to be invested in, Mr. Speaker, sir. So the commitment by the Senator to develop a legislation to support farmers who are doing farming of mung beans, Mr. Speaker, is highly commendable. And we would hope, Mr. Speaker, that a registration of this nature would also be done for other crops in this category, Mr. Speaker, sir. The only concern, I don't know, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would have wanted the Senator to be here. I see he's still here. Mr. Speaker, sir, the only concern is that it is as though the mung bean has been selected within the bean family to gain the attention and the kind of location it has found within a specific legislation that then regulates the whole environment that is going to deal with this crop. Mr. Speaker, looking at the proposed bill, it is very, very comprehensive. It provides a framework for the coordinated implementation of the national policies and strategies on the development and regulation of the mung bean industry. And it also facilitates, and it is also intended to facilitate and develop a framework to regulate and promote the development of mung bean industry in Kenya in order to make it competitive at the international market, Mr. Speaker, sir. Now, I am asking myself, Mr. Speaker, sir, whether a senator would have considered including different species of beans within the same mung bean bill, in which event, of course, he would have to amend the title of the mung beans bill, maybe to make it the beans bill, because there are different categories. We have another bean called Wairimo. We have another bean called Mwitemania. These are different kinds of beans which are also in this category, and maybe whose farming has suffered the same fate that the mung bean has suffered. The framework proposed in this bill is very comprehensive because it not only touches on the national government, it goes down to the county governments, which is important because agriculture is a devolved function, Mr. Speaker, sir. And it puts some functions upon the Council of Governors.
What's your point of order, Senator Essing?
Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 41 on quorum during proceedings of the Senate. We do not have the numbers to sustain this engagement.
Clerk, could the Sergeant at Arms ring the quorum bell for 3 minutes? Honorable Senators, Senator Veronica Ndwati, you will have, let's rise, you will have a balance of 16 minutes when the House resumes to continue their contribution. Honorable Senators, there being no quorum and having rung the quorum bell pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 41-2, the Senate stands adjourned until Tuesday, 27 June 2023 at 2:30 p.m.